What if I told you there was a monument hidden in a neighborhood in Plymouth, Massachusetts that spelled out explicitly in great detail the secret sauce of American exceptionalism and how to save our country? Hi, guys. Welcome to American Made. I am your host, Andrew Muller. Welcome to our third episode. So excited to be here with you. I want to share with you something that you could probably talk to a million Americans, and maybe one would have heard of this monument before. It's called the Forefathers Monument in Plymouth, Massachusetts. I found out about this monument probably in early high school a handful of years ago. And once I studied it and found out what it was and what it represented, it changed my worldview and outlook, not only on American history and who our pilgrim forefathers were, but also how to save America. So let's get into this a little bit. I have actually a model of it sitting next to me here. This is the Forefathers Monument, a small scale of it. I might pick it up and show some elements of it. We also have some high quality images that we're going to go through during this program. But as I said, this is a monument located in Plymouth, Massachusetts. The official concept of this monument dates back to 1820, even though during George Washington's first term, or second term, excuse me, as president, they had floated ideas about how can we encapsulate the pilgrims, remember them, honor them, but they didn't actually begin a project on memorializing the pilgrims up until 1820. Then the Civil War happened, the project got pushed back, and it wasn't finished until 1889. Even President Abraham Lincoln donated to the erection of this monument. It was built by a gentleman named Hammett Billings, who is a very prolific architect, built a lot of things in the Plymouth, Massachusetts area. And as I started, it's widely unknown. You can see this aerial shot here. It's literally built in the middle of a subdivision, or maybe I should say a subdivision was built around it. There are no signs or plaques that are nice or noticeable. There's a gravel road that's built around it. The grass is not very well maintained. There's no lights. There's no nice shrubbery. The concrete is not power washed and maintained. Up until a few years ago, there were old bird nests built on this, fingers broken off of the statues, and yet it's America's largest freestanding granite monument. It was built during one of the most significant times in American history, the Civil War, even though the construction of it was paused, but it was happening during that time. A famous president, one of the top five famous presidents, Abraham Lincoln, personally donated a decent sum to the creation of this monument, and it's the only one in the United States that shares in full the worldview of our pilgrim forefathers, and nobody knows about it. So that's why we're doing this broadcast. I want to tell you about it because I don't just think this is some unique, interesting historical monument. I actually believe this monument has a truer than true meaning to it that could literally change our country if understood by Americans. So let's get into this. Now, the monument at the front of it, the very front, it has this plaque. And this plaque here at the front, it says, "A national monument to the forefathers, erected by a grateful people in remembrance of their labors, sacrifices, and sufferings for the cause of civil and religious liberty." So this is a monument to remember who the pilgrims were, to dedicate their memory, and to study why they did what they did. Now, I mentioned this monument's absolutely here. We have a picture of it. This is picture number one. I went and visited this monument on my honeymoon, nonetheless. There we go. I'm a geek. But you can see me there. I'm wearing shorts and a little blue polo shirt. I'm at the very, very base in the center of the monument at the bottom. You can see just for scale how large this is. Largest freestanding granite monument in the United States. So I've been to this monument. I've studied it. I know a lot about it, and I want to share with you the details about it today. So it has five people on it. The monument is comprised of five figures, if you will. The first is Faith. Faith is this big, most prominent statue here. You can see Faith there. And I'm going to ask the production team to keep that photo up for a while I talk about this, because we're going to kind of pick through some of the elements of this monument. Now, Faith, you could see there at the top of her head, she has a crown. And that crown has a star on it. And that star indicates the star of wisdom, mythologically and also symbolically, a star of wisdom there. She's pointing to heaven very prominently, pointing to God. She's also looking out at the Atlantic Ocean from whence the pilgrims came. Her foot is propped up against a rock. You can see that. That is Plymouth Rock that her foot is rested upon, indicating that the pilgrims had faith that led them to create the new world, which was America, landing upon Plymouth Rock. She's also holding a book. That book is the Bible, the Holy Scriptures. You notice that the pages are open. There's a crack in it. It's being read, it's being studied. Faith is carrying that Bible, and that Bible would have been the Geneva Bible. It wouldn't have been the King James Bible or anything else. It was the English Bible, the Geneva one that was the most prominent used by the pilgrims. Now, I actually do have in my collection of documents here a leaflet from a 1597 Geneva Bible. This could have been a page from a Bible that is dated around the time the pilgrims would have come. Of course, they came in 1620. This was just a mere 23 years. This particular leaflet was printed 23 years before the pilgrims landed in the New World. John Bunyan wrote his famous book of Pilgrim's Progress with the Geneva Bible. And of course, the pilgrims carried that. So that's the Bible that the pilgrims would have had. If we go back to that image of faith there, just briefly, again, we see that star on her forehead. We see the Bible in her hands. She's looking out from whence she came. This is the primary element of this statue. It's the core. It's at the center. It's the most prominent. It's at the top. It's faith. And you have to remember, the point of this monument is to depict the worldview, priorities, and beliefs of our pilgrim forefathers. These are the separatists that came from England. They went to Leiden, Holland. They didn't appreciate the secular culture that they had in Leiden, Holland. They had religious freedom in Leiden, Holland when they left the UK, but they didn't have a cultural Christian system of government or cultural Christianity for their children to grow up in. That's why they came to America. It wasn't just for economic prosperity. It wasn't just for religious liberty, because they had economic prosperity and they had religious liberty in Leiden, Holland, but they didn't have a Christian culture. It was a secular culture. So that's why they came to America. So that's the first element. So that's faith, right? So we remember her. She's the pinnacle. She's the point. She's the most prominent figure. Then it goes down to the bottom right to morality. That's the next section. Morality. So you have a faith. That faith creates a moral code. That faith creates a moral system that you govern under. So you can see this morality figure here. She's holding a tablet. That tablet is the Ten Commandments. That is the underpinning of the Judeo-Christian worldview, right? And she's also holding a scroll. That is the New Testament. So in the Ten Commandments there and also the scroll, she holds the Old and New Testament, the whole counsel of God, the whole scripture. She also has a chest piece on. She's wearing some sort of a breastplate. You can see in that picture of the breastplate something that perhaps an ancient priest would have worn. This is something that is very indicative of the scriptures, very indicative of the sort of uh, symbolism that we would see coming out of a lawgiver or a prophet. So this is a woman who is virtuous. She's moral. She uses the counsel of God as representative by the Ten Commandments and the scroll of the New Testament as the whole counsel of God. She is seated firmly. She has her foot placed upon a solid rock. Perhaps you could maybe even stretch and say that that is alluding to in the scripture, or it says, if you build your house on the rock, you are very solid. On the sand, it's shifting. And this is significant because we move from faith to morality. Morality is found in the Bible. You need a moral culture to be able to govern. And in America, that moral system, that moral code has always been the Bible. Now, there is also little sub-reliefs under the four figures below faith. And those sub-reliefs depict something to do with the pilgrims and the pilgrim story that ties in to the figure and the pillar or principle that they represent. So for morality, she has a sub-relief below her that has the embarkation of the pilgrims. And you can see that on the screen right now. That sub-relief below morality has the pilgrims leaving John Robinson, who was their pastor, leaving John Robinson, leaving England to get on to the Mayflower, the Speedwell. The Speedwell was the ship the Pilgrims were originally going to take. It wasn't speedy. It wasn't well. It sprung a leak. Then they went on the Mayflower, and that was the ship that they took. But this subrelief under morality depicts that embarkation, depicts that leaving of the Pilgrims to go to Leiden, Holland, and then eventually to the New World. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the Pilgrims had a faith that created a morality, a system of government that led them to take an action, that led them to do something dutiful. They had a duty to not only themselves, but their kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids' kids and generations hence. They felt a moral obligation, a moral duty to create a culture that was based upon Christian values. So you kind of see what we're building here. People built on faith that have a morality that lead them to do something with that morality and that belief system, which was to leave their homes and go and create a new world. So that is morality. So we have faith, morality. Then that leads us to our next statue, and that is law. So this is one of my favorites because law actually is built upon the faith and morality of the Christian worldview. Now, if we look at the figure of law here, this was before he was restored. You can see his fingers there are broken because, as I've mentioned, despite this being a very historically significant monument, it was in very poor repair. That has been changed as of late. They have repaired it, which I am appreciative of. But let's look at this law character and study him. So he's the first character we see that has defined pupils. He has a very stern look. He's very ready. He's watching. He's careful. He has very defined facial features that show he's attentive. He's got his hand out in mercy, but he also has the tablets or the law, generally speaking. He's sitting in a chair of judgment, a throne, a position of authority, and he is watching. This is incredibly important because in America, we also believe in mercy. We also believe in law. That's a biblical premise, right? We're not completely authoritarian. We're not completely anarchists. We have a balance of mercy and the law where there is redemption, there is restitution, but there's also punishment, and there's just punishment under a legal system. But you can't have a legal system without having an underpinning moral framework to determine absolute truth. And that's why faith and morality preceded law in this chronology we're exploring here of this monument. So remember, I said every monument has, every little figure has a sub-relief below it that speaks to a greater principle within the Pilgrim story. So under law is this sub-relief that shows a treaty, and you can see it there. Below law, there's this picture of the Pilgrim sitting at a table, and those are with the Wampanoags. Now, the Wampanoags were an Indian group that lived in the region that the Pilgrims dwelled, and there was actually an instance, and people need to look into this because it's incredibly significant, that the Pilgrims entered a just and mutually beneficial treaty with the local Wampanoags based on higher law, which was Christianity in the Bible, which ensured a fair treatment between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag Indians and mutual respect between their communities. And there's actually a story of two Pilgrims being killed via capital punishment by the Pilgrims for trespassing against the Wampanoag Indians. I'll repeat that. The Pilgrims executed capital punishment. They killed two of their own people for committing crimes against the Wampanoag Indians because they had a treaty. So this blows up the entire narrative that the Pilgrims came and brought disease and oppressed the Indians and stole their land. Hogwash. They had a treaty with the Wampanoags, mutually signed, consensually so, that put them both under a fair and equal system of law because everyone's equal under the law. Everyone's equal under the eyes of God. And that's why this monument starts with faith and morality, because it's not just white colonialism. No, it's everyone's created equal under God. They're endowed with inalienable rights. This is what our forefathers later created in the Declaration of Independence over 100 years later in 1776. This was the foundation of that. Extraordinarily important to understanding our country's heritage. So we're flying through this. Faith, morality, you create a system of morality, or you abide by it. We don't create it. God creates it. And then that makes law. We have mercy. We have justice. His hands out in mercy. He's holding the table of the law. This was evident in the Pilgrims' actions with their treaty with the Wampanoag Indians. So now we turn to education. And this is perhaps where we failed the most in the United States, is with regards to education. Faith creates morality. Morality, you build laws upon those systems of morals, and then you educate your children in the laws, in the country, in the history, and then in the faith. And that is what they believed. So education was incredibly important. We see under education this beautiful young mother. She is holding a book. She is instructing her children. She has a wreath upon her head. Now, that wreath kind of harkens back to almost an Olympic wreath you would see placed upon the head of a victor during the Olympics. That crown of victory, that symbolic wreath that was placed upon the head of an athlete that just won a big dash or what have you. She is throned in victory. The scripture says that parents are blessed if their quivers are full of arrows of successful children who fear the Lord. She is somebody who not only sits and educates her children, but does so in a matter of victory. So she's holding a book. She's educating her children, perhaps from the Bible. That might be what that book is. And it's the mother doing that. You notice it's not the state. You notice that they don't have the governor holding the book. You notice that they don't have the king holding the book. You notice that they don't have the local mayor of your town holding the book. It's the mother that's holding the book. And you might say, well, how do you know she's the mother? Well, we don't have pictures for every single thing, but there's actually on the side, and I think we do have a picture of this. This is number 10. There's a or no, this is number 9, excuse me. We have the subrelief of a grandfather. And this grandfather is pointing to the Bible. He's pointing to a globe that's below him, and that is labeled wisdom. Now, all of these monuments, all these little sub characters, they have little statues on the sub reliefs that depict greater meaning. We don't have time to get into all that, but I wanted to show this one in particular because it indicates that education is a family affair, right? You have the mother sitting there, you have the grandfather on the side. This is something that is generational. It's passed down. It's within the families. It's localized. This is incredibly significant. The Pilgrims didn't have public schools. The Pilgrims didn't have charter schools. The Pilgrims didn't have school choice. They homeschooled their children. And the grandfathers were involved, as you can see with that old man there pointing to the globe, pointing to the Bible, as the mother sitting there educating. So that is what we have. What is education's subrelief? Well, her subrelief that has the Pilgrim story shows the compact being signed. This is the Mayflower Compact. We talked about the Mayflower Compact in the very first episode of American Made, where before stepping off the Mayflower, the Pilgrims sat down and signed a document that said, for the glory of God and the undertaking of the Christian faith, they were going to bind themselves in a mutual body politic, and that they were going to do that for the advancement of the Christian faith and to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. So those people were educated. They were educated in law, morality, systems of government. They understood human nature. And because of that education that was most likely derived from home and their local communities, not state-controlled education, they were able to create a culture that was Christian and God-honoring. So faith, morality, law, education. Where do we go from there? Well, if you combine all those things, if you have a faith that informs your morality, if you have a morality that informs your laws, if you educate your children on all of that, you come to the final piece. This is perhaps the fan favorite, liberty. He is the final fifth man, the fifth person on this statue, and he is the reward. He is the prize of this labor. You can see him there. There's so much to depict. He also has pupils. He's looking out. He's not looking at anybody in particular. He's not looking forward. He's looking out on watch. He's a sentinel. He's a guardian. He has broken chains in his left hand. The right hand you see there on the screen. His chains are broken. He has broken the bondage that was put on him. You can see on his right foot, the left foot on the screen, more chains that are broken. He has a lion's paw coming over his shoulder. That represents two things. That represents, one, the monarchy. The monarchy in England was depicted by that of a lion, but also biblically Satan, where in the scripture we see that Satan is roaming around as a roaring lion looking for somebody to devour. The liberty man, the informed citizen, the dutiful patriot, he is sitting there unshackled, the lion skin beside him. We don't have a picture of the side of this monument, but there's actually more of the lion skin to his side. He's wearing armor. Perhaps that's the armor of God depicted in the Old Testament. Perhaps that is just purely a military thing because he's ready to defend his liberty. He has a sheath that he is holding, that a sword is in. He's ready to fight. He's ready to stand. He's watchful. He didn't just have faith, morality, law, educate his children, and then go to sleep and watch a football game. He remembers those broken chains. They're in his hand there. He has his sword ready. He knows his history, that he has destroyed the lion and has defeated it, not by his own strength, but by that of the entity above him, which is faith, pointing to the God of the Bible as depicted there with the faith figure holding the Geneva. This is what the mandate is. This is what the mission is. This is what the call to action is at the end of this monument: to be patriots, to be ready to defend and to fight for our freedoms. And this is the best part. We started faith looking out to the ocean, to the Atlantic, from whence the pilgrims came. What's at the back of the monument facing the rest of the country? Well, what's at the back is a quote. And that quote is from William Bradford. He was the signatory of the Mayflower Compact. He was the governor of the Pilgrims intermittently for about 30 years, from 1621 till 1657. And on the back of the Forefathers Monument, facing the rest of the country, he gives perhaps one of the most powerful statements ever. Thus, out of small beginnings, greater things have been produced by his hand, talking about God, that made all things of nothing and gives being to all things that are. And as one small candle may light 1,000, so the light here kindled hath shown unto many, yea, in some sort, to our whole nation, let the glorious name of Jehovah have all the praise. Unbelievably powerful. So, thus out of small beginnings, what's that? That's the Pilgrims, right? What did they produce? A culture, a system of government built upon God's law, created by God, because he gives being to all things and creates things out of nothing and gives being to all things that are. And the one small candle he references is the Pilgrims. Group of approximately 100 or so, dwindled down to around 50 to 40 after the first cold winter. This was not a large group. This was not a majority. This was a small group in the wilderness, if you will, harkening back to Exodus and the Israelites in the desert. It was a small group, and the one candle that they lit, he prayed, would shine unto many. And what was the purpose? The end of the quote. Let's throw up that quote one more time. What was the purpose? To let the glorious name of Jehovah, not God, not some Hindu God, not some pagan God, not Muslim God. No, Jehovah, Jesus Christ, the God of the Bible, New and Old Testament, him. Let the glorious name of Jehovah have all the praise. So that is why the Pilgrims came. It wasn't for economic purposes. It wasn't for purely religious liberty. It was to create a Christian culture, a Christian society. And it's not a theocracy. You don't have to be a Christian to live here, but you have to recognize that Christianity is the moral framework upon which our country was built, because every country has a moral framework upon which they were built. And I would challenge you, if that triggers you, to find a country that is not built upon the Judeo-Christian worldview that has been more successful than ours. And you can say, well, maybe communist China. Well, yeah. How do they do that? Slave labor. And it's a false facade of economic strength that's built upon tyranny that will not last and that will crumble eventually. They don't have liberty. They don't have inalienable rights. They do from God, but they're not protected by the government. That is not a thriving society. That is not a good society. A society that kills off children because they don't fit the demographic preference of the tyrant. That is not a good society. Name another one. Canada? I mean, you get debanked over there. I mean, name any country and try to make a case that they're better than the United States. And it's not America's great because just America, stars and stripes, guns, fireworks. It's because of the principles that undergird it, the Christian principles. And that can apply to any country, by the way. But America's the only one that has done it successfully over a long period of time. And that is why it is exceptional. And that is why it's great. So this monument that's built in Plymouth, Massachusetts, no one knows about it. And yet I think after just giving that overview to you, it explains the secret sauce. This is the recipe that can save our country. It's the recipe that built it. And I believe it's the recipe that can save it. And why is it being hidden? Why is this monument that's more significant in meaning than the Statue of Liberty, that's more significant in its intrinsic beauty, in my opinion, than something along the lines of, the Lincoln Memorial or the Washington Memorial in Washington, D.C.? Why does this not get the same attention? Okay. It's a park. It's maintained by the state. But why doesn't it get the same level? Abraham Lincoln donated to it. Like, this is supposed to be a significant reminder of who we are as a country, and yet it's been completely forgotten. You have to ask yourself why. Well, I think if you look at the meaning of it, it's apparent why it's been rejected. And I mentioned that Abraham Lincoln donated this. I also have, this is a original donation certificate to create the Forefathers Monument. This donation certificate is from 1855. It was a donation of what looks to be $15, which in 1855, $15 was a lot more than $15 today. I also have in my collection of documents here, this is a original photograph taken by a local Massachusetts photographer. This is a kind of a 3D photograph they used to put in a machine, and you distance it back and forth, and the two images would merge together and kind of make a 3D image. But on the back, this local photographer actually documents that the state of Massachusetts paid for the Statue of Morality, made a big significant donation for the creation of the sub-statue here, Morality. So I don't think Massachusetts, as in its current state, is paying for morality, but at one point in time they did. So let's wrap this up. In Plymouth, Massachusetts, in the middle of a subdivision, there's the largest freestanding granite monument in the United States, and it comprises 5 figures. And those 5 figures, faith, morality, law, education, and liberty, can save the United States of America because it's what's created the United States of America. And ultimately, this is just a statue. It doesn't have any sort of, holy connotation to it. It's just something made by man. But the truth that it speaks is so significant, it's so profound, and it's so well put that without writing a book on it, it just visually tells you what made America unique. And for that, I think it's worth remembering. If you're interested in this, there's a documentary that introduced me to it, and I think it's the definitive source. It's called Monumental by Kirk Cameron. He's the guy that was in that show growing up. I think it was called Growing Pains or Family Ties or something like that. I can't remember. But he was in that show, very popular actor back in the day, kind of a teen actor. But he's a devout Christian, a patriot, and he made a documentary titled Monumental, where he goes to this monument, he talks with historians and local people and exposes what this is and how it can save the United States. And I think this is really worth looking into. If you're a young person and you are dissatisfied with the way the country is going, look into this monument and study the history, embrace it, for it is your heritage. If you are a homeschool parent and you're looking for an incredible piece of American history to show your children what makes America exceptional, study this monument and share it with them. If you are somebody who is doubtful if America can be turned back, if you're somebody who's blackpilling, I like to say, or you're a doom and gloomer and you say America's cooked and we're not going to be saved, well, less than 100 pilgrims changed the course of history and created a country. There are far more than 100 patriots who would die for our country and devote their lives to the cause of liberty. And we can reclaim that promise. We can reclaim that sacred method of liberty if we return to our roots, if we return to our heritage. And I think there is no greater place to start than the Pilgrims. They were our original forebears. They were the ones who sacrificed and laid down their lives almost like rugs upon a muddy puddle that we could walk across to have freedom. They didn't get to see it in their lifetimes, but we did. And yet we forget them. We disrespect them. We throw hateful phrases at them because we dishonor them, because we don't know them. But we can. And I hope that starts with a study of this monument and who they are, because it's truly exceptional and it has power still today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of American Made. You can follow us on X America News. Please look up this monument, go and visit it, take pictures of it, share this with friends. Let's get this monument back into Americans' minds and hearts so that we can make America great again, truly. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been a pleasure. I'm Andrew Muller. Until next time, keep it local, keep it God-honoring, and let's try to keep things American made.